In CSS, there are two ways to create animations: transitions and animations. Transitions are simple. They smoothly change one property from one state to another. But when you want more control and more complex effects, you use CSS animations with keyframes. So what is keyframes? Keyframes is a special CSS rule that defines the different stages of an animation over time. It controls how an element looks at specific moments during the animation. Instead of just having a starting point and an ending point, keyframes lets you add multiple steps in between. This means you can create detailed, multi-step animations with full control. You can control the duration, timing function, delay, iteration count, and direction of the animation. In short, keyframes is the heart of CSS animations. Let's get started. If you really want to become confident in front-end development, not just animations, but HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and real-world projects, structured learning makes a huge difference. That's where Scrimba comes in. Scrimba is an interactive learning platform built especially for developers. It offers clear learning paths like the front-end developer path, back-end developer path, and full-stack developer path. What makes Scrimba different from normal video courses is this: you don't just watch code. You can pause the lesson, click directly inside the code editor, edit it, and run it instantly. You learn by actually doing. Around 35% of their courses are completely free, so you can start without spending anything. If you're serious about becoming a front-end developer, I highly recommend their front-end developer career path. It gives you a step-by-step roadmap from beginner to advanced. Not random tutorials, but structured guidance. If you want to check it out, I've added the link in the description. You can also get 20% off a Scrimba Pro subscription using that link. Alright, now let's jump back to CSS keyframes. First, we know that a transition only works when we trigger an action, like hover. For example, if I hover over a box and use transform, rotate 45 degrees, the box rotates 45 degrees, but it only reacts while I'm hovering. As soon as I remove the hover, it goes back to its original position. Transitions only let you define a start state and an end state. That's it. But what if I want more? What if I want the box to move right, then automatically move down, then move left, and finally return to its original position to create a full circle? That's not possible with transitions. If I want multiple steps and full control over the animation, I needed keyframes. First, to create an animation, remove the hover effect and the transition property. Then write the keyframes rule. To define the stages of the animation, I can use 0%, 25%, 50%, and 75%. I'm choosing 4 steps because that's all I need for this animation. But you can use any percentage you want, like 20% or 10%. The percentages don't have to be in exact order. That's the flexibility of keyframes. Now let's define what happens at each stage of the animation. At 0%, I don't want anything to change, so I'll write transform translate 0, 0, so the box stays in its original position. At 25%, I want the box to move to the right, so I'll use transform translate 300 pixels, 0. This moves the box 300 pixels in the X direction while keeping the Y position the same. To make the animation work, we need to apply it to the box. For that, we add 2 properties: animation name and animation duration. I'll set the animation name to MoveBox, you can use any name you want, and set the duration to 3 seconds. If the animation doesn't run, make sure the name in animation name matches the name inside the keyframes rule. Once the names match, the animation will work correctly. Want to learn more about CSS animations? Check out our full CSS animation video. At 50%, I want the box to move to the bottom right, so I'll set both the X and Y values to 300 pixels by writing transform translate 300 pixels, 300 pixels. Now you'll see the box move to the right first, then go down to the bottom right, and after that, it starts moving back up. For the final state, I'll write transform translate 0, 300 pixels. This moves the box back to the left while keeping it 300 pixels down. Now the animation is complete. We've created this movement step by step using keyframes. Here, I'll also add a 100% state. It will be the same as the 0% state, and to keep the code clean and short, I can combine both states using a comma. Now you can see the animation works properly. Next, I've already defined two important properties. The animation name tells the browser which keyframes animation to use. The animation duration defines how long the animation takes to complete one cycle. If you set it to 0 seconds, the animation won't run. Next is animation timing function. It controls the speed of the animation and works just like transition timing function. If I use ease in out, the animation starts slow, speeds up in the middle, and slows down again at the end. Then we have animation delay, which sets a delay before the animation starts. For example, if I set it to 2 seconds, the animation will wait 2 seconds before playing. Finally, animation iteration count controls how many times the animation repeats. You can set it to a specific number or use the keyword infinite to make it run forever. Next is animation direction. It controls whether the animation runs normally or in reverse. By default, it's set to normal, which means the animation plays from the first keyframe to the last. If you set it to reverse, the animation starts from the last keyframe and ends at the first. If you use alternate, the animation plays forward first, then backward. And with alternate reverse, it plays backward first, then forward. Now let's talk about animation fill mode. I'll add another keyframes rule and make sure the animation name matches the keyframe's name. In this example, I'll define two states where the box moves from -400 pixels to 300 pixels. If I use animation fill mode forwards, the animation stays at the last keyframe after it finishes. If I use backwards, the element applies the starting keyframe styles before the animation begins and returns to its original state after it ends. If I use both, it applies both the forwards and backwards behavior. Finally, we have animation play state. This property lets you pause and resume the animation. It accepts values like running and paused. If you want to pause the animation on hover, just add a :hover state and set animation play state paused. All of these animation properties can be used individually, or you can combine them using the shorthand animation property. This allows you to write everything in a single line, keeping your CSS clean and concise. Now I want to animate this box in a circular motion. To do that, I'll create another keyframes rule and name it orbit. In this rule, I'll define two states, from and to. The from state represents the start of the animation, which is 0%, and the to state represents the end, which is 100%. Inside from, I'll set transform rotate 0 degrees, and inside to, I'll set transform rotate 360 degrees. Then I'll update the animation name to orbit so this animation runs. Finally, I'll set border radius 50% to make the box a circle. Now the animation plays in a circular motion, although the rotation might not be very noticeable. Now I'll remove the animation from the box and apply this keyframes animation to the container instead. I'll also set border radius 50% to make the container a circle. Now you can see the animation looks like an orbit, moving in a circular path. If you've seen this kind of animation on websites, this is usually how it's built.